Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And oh my gosh, February has been so much fun with all of our programs focusing on AI. And I cannot think of a better person to wrap this up than my friend, Brian Basilico. I don't even know how many times Brian's been on the program. We try and do it at least once a year. And so you've been on quite a few times. I think you're probably the guest who's been on the most, but that's because you know the most. Yeah, you do. You do.
My head's going to have to get bigger here.
I know it is. It is. So let me tell people just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Brian Basilico is the founder of B2B Interactive Marketing. He is a seasoned thought leader with over 45 years of experience, started when he was 12, with traditional, digital, and relationship marketing. Brian is an internationally known author, podcaster, and speaker, respected as an expert in using content marketing and distribution technologies to supercharge sales and prospecting efforts. He is the author of several books, including It's Not About You, It's About Bacon. Brian and his team of experts understand the powerful synergy between compelling content and strategic networking, especially on LinkedIn. This includes websites, social media, email, SEO, Google, and artificial intelligence, and of course, LinkedIn advertising. He utilizes current business relationships within accounting and CRM systems integration to make wonderful connections. His unique systems and approach have helped companies turn every dollar spent on marketing into 10 to 15 times return on investment for sales to current and prospective customers. So again, welcome back, Brian.
Thank you, Deb. What a wonderful introduction.
I know. Now, did AI write it for you?
Absolutely, maybe.
I had it write mine, and it put in words I was thinking,
Yeah. The beauty of AI is that you can put something in there and it kind of takes you in a different direction. But you've got to make it yours, right. and like I know how you speak. If I read something that was written by AI that you're putting out there that you're trying to get across and it doesn't sound like you, it's like, Deb, come on.
Right. And that's obviously one of the issues that we're having with AI, is we write it and we think, ooh, that sounds good. But the people who know us go, nah.
Right. Well, and when you sit down and you look at writing, which is, writing is a very creative thing, right? And we'll talk about some AI tools and methodologies and things that I use and the way that things work. But the whole thing about writing is if you go into AI and say, write me a paragraph about, right? Unless you're a prompt genius, which they make $3.5 million per year.
I know. Those of you in college, hello.
Yeah. If you're a prompt genius and can write great prompts and basically put in everything like, it's not write me an intro paragraph about myself to be used on a podcast is what most people do.
That would be what I would put.
Right. But what you really have to do is say, write me an intro paragraph that a small to mid-sized business owner who has 5 salespeople, who is looking to, increase their sales through marketing, but have tried traditional agencies, but are not happy with them because they're using the same techniques that everybody else is in a way that really exemplifies who Brian Basilico is on the internet and what he does and how he does it and why he does it, and put all of that in a paragraph. And then I could probably go on for a half hour prompting to write a paragraph. And what it's going to come back with is, huh?
Right. Because it may or may not know enough about you to even do that. And I think that's, when we're having it do personal things, that's obviously the hardest part. And hopefully that will never catch up.
And you and I have an advantage because we are all over the internet. I mean, you've been you're over 1,000 podcasts. I'm over 1,000 podcasts. I've written 5 books. I've written probably 2,000 or 3,000 articles. I've been on stage and interviewed and on video. So the internet has a lot of stuff that it could use to find out about me and my thoughts and all this other stuff. But herein lies the problem. I am not famous enough for the Chat GPT and all the other LLMs to go out and scrape my stuff. I'm too small of a fish in a very big pond.
Right.
So if you are Ariana Huffington or anybody, in the internet world, or anybody in politics or religion or, something where a mass audience would want to pay attention to it, then it will know more about you and be able to pull in more of that personality and stuff. Otherwise, what it's going to do is go out to other people that it thinks is going to be similar to you and start grabbing information and making it into something that may sound really good, but is not really you.
Right. Yeah. It might actually be your competitor.
Right. Exactly.
So I use an AI program called Cintra.ai. And it's just kind of one of those that somebody said, hey, you should use. And so you set up a brain in it and you just download and download and download. And that's what you're doing, is you're giving it you, right? And so I linked it to my website. I linked it to my podcast. I linked it to my blog post, all of those things. And it actually comes closer when I say, write a blog post like I would write about such and such and such. And it will come pretty close enough that it's a little scary.
Right. But okay, so let's get down to brass tacks and basics about AI. Believe it or not, AI has been around a long time.
Yes. Hello, Siri. Hello, right?
Well, even before Siri and all this other stuff, I worked at AT&T in the 1980s, and they had big computers with hard disks that looked like
they spun.
Yeah, well, they were big. I mean, we used to call them dishwashers because you'd put the thing in, and it looked like a washing machine or dishwasher. And they had punch cards and they had all this other stuff. That is artificial intelligence. It is putting a program in, having a computer grab that information, interpret it, and do something. Right?
Even if you're just saying, what is 2 + 2?
Exactly. Yes. So artificial intelligence, it's like all of a sudden the world became officially aware of artificial intelligence in 2022. Oh my God, that was 3 years ago.
I know.
Yeah. But artificial intelligence, you have to put it into 2 worlds. The first one is artificial, right? It has the ability to logic based on what it's programmed and told to do. It will eventually get to the point where it'll be able to have emotion tied into it. And eventually, yeah, right, exactly. But it also, the one thing that it cannot do with, it can preemptively predict some futures, but it can't predict the future where things are at. So as we're talking today, we're sitting here in the middle of February. We've just had a changing of the guard in America. We have the changing of the guard overseas. We have all this turmoil and things going on, right? Now, if we record this in, let's say mid-January, blink,
we do pre-record, folks. It's okay.
Yeah, right. So, we're talking somewhere about 6 weeks, right? I can't tell you where the world's going to be in 6 weeks.
Right.
I can think
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
I have ideas, but
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, I know for a fact that we
Mm-hmm.
are going to have a changing of the guard.
Right.
There's all kinds of things going
Mm-hmm.
on in the world. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know what's going to happen. There's
Right.
no way to really know and
Mm-hmm.
predict what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we sit down and we look at AI tools and AI in general basically goes back and scrapes history,
Mm-hmm.
tries to take that and synthesize it into something that is useful as a tool to you for a specific task,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are some preemptive things that you could do. You could put in, Sun Tzu and The Art of War
Mm-hmm.
and a whole bunch of other war books
Mm-hmm.
and put those in and then put in a personality test on a world leader and say, so based on all of this data with
Mm-hmm.
war and this world leader, what is their next move on the battlefield to do something, right?
Ooh.
And then you could program
Mm-hmm.
all of your drones to
Mm-hmm.
basically gather intelligence
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that your ability to
Mm-hmm.
predict what might
Mm-hmm.
happen is actually, somewhat
Mm-hmm.
feasible based on what's happening there,
Mm-hmm.
and then can come back and give you predictive models to say, here are
Right.
three good options and do
Mm-hmm.
something with
Mm-hmm.
it, right? But when it gets down to it, you have to make a choice. If you trust one answer,
Mm-hmm.
you're not making a choice, you're basically following orders,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have to let the data and some kind of input pull those two things together
Mm-hmm.
to create a reality which you have to choose from and
Mm-hmm.
move on from.
Right.
So, go ahead.
Well, and as you said, it still can't predict. It might say, okay, this person will declare war and do such and such. It comes time for that, and he swats at a mosquito and starts the wrong thing,
Right.
right? And so you never know, might get sick that day, might have been hit by a
Right.
car. I mean, and yeah, there's, aside from the people who have their fancy little crystal balls,
Right.
no, we're
Right.
not predicting. Now, can it base it on prior history? Sure, all sorts of
Right.
things, but it still can't say X will happen.
Right. Exactly. Now, let's get into as a small business owner, what does that
Mm-hmm.
mean? Right?
Right.
As a small business owner, we are trying to, let's just say we're trying to write a blog to convince a person who doesn't know us
Mm-hmm.
to follow us
Mm-hmm.
and pay attention and eventually have a phone call or conversation
Mm-hmm.
with us or something along that
Mm-hmm.
line. At the time that we write it, the world is going to be in a particular spot. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be, where the economy is good, the
Mm-hmm.
economy is bad, those kind of things. By the time the person reads it, we could be in a completely different
Right.
place.
And that could be a week, that could be years.
Right, exactly. So, where artificial intelligence will come into play in the future, maybe, is that it will be able to go back and look at everything that's happened
Mm-hmm.
and rewrite the article if somebody
Yeah.
downloads it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, those are one of the things that potentially could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is then you have to preemptively know the personality of the person reading it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Right.
mean, I don't know if you've taken disc tests
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
Myers-Briggs
Right.
or those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things, but I always use disc because it's easy. There's four.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
the DISC, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
the dominant, the innovator, the collaborator, and the skeptic,
Right.
something along those lines, right? And so you're going to have to know if it's going to
Mm-hmm.
rewrite it, you have to
Mm-hmm.
rewrite it for that person
Right. And
at the
you don't know
time,
their culture, you don't know their age, you don't know their income,
right?
all
Unless
of those
they're
things that we as marketing people hopefully know.
right, exactly. And so there's so many factors around this. So what I'm trying to say is that AI is great, right?
Mm-hmm.
It does some cool things. It'll
Mm-hmm.
give you something, but it's still going to boil down to at one point or another is that you as a human
Mm-hmm.
are going to be given three choices
Mm-hmm.
and have to make a decision,
Right.
right?
Right.
You have to make a decision on how you're going to
Mm-hmm.
deliver it, what you're going to
Mm-hmm.
write, what model
Mm-hmm.
you want to put into it, and you want to make sure the message is uniquely you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just let AI write for you,
Mm-hmm.
What it's going to do is it's going to go out to a little bit of you and all your competition and
Mm-hmm.
synthesize all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff and try to make it as generic as possible to
Mm-hmm.
get the largest audience
Mm-hmm.
to see what you're trying to put out
Mm-hmm.
there.
Right.
Your goal as a business owner, unless you're selling consumer goods, you got to be
Mm-hmm.
different
Mm-hmm.
thinking about consumer and
Mm-hmm.
B2B.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of my company is
B2B.
B2B
Mm-hmm.
Interactive
Mm-hmm.
Marketing, right? Consumers are very fickle.
Mm-hmm.
B2B people are very precise,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what you've really got to do is at the time understand who you're talking to, what their needs are,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to them in a way that is going to be uniquely you, but still match the
Mm-hmm.
expectations or what they're looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right. And the thing that so many people are getting caught up in is like, oh my God, it's going to take over our jobs. No, it is a tool. It is
right.
only a tool. 50 years from now, hopefully, it will still only be a tool. Now it'll probably be
Mhm.
a heck of a lot smarter.
Right.
But and so it's how we use it. You talk about competition. I was working on a proposal. And so I was doing this, I did it back and forth in Sintra and Chat GPT to see
Hmm.
what it would come up with. And it was, they were close, but I ended up kind of merging. But anyhow, one of the things that Sintra does is it really can scrub a website and pull data off of it.
Hmm.
And so I said, okay, here are two companies that would be considered my competitors. Look at what they say and see if we should include anything from that in this proposal. And it actually came back with several suggestions.
Hmm.
Some I liked, some I didn't, because like some of them were like, no, I would not offer that as a service. That's great that they do, but I'm not going to do that.
Right.
But it also said this is a word that it uses several times, and I
Hmm.
thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Did I, and so yeah, but and could I have done that myself? Sure. Would it have taken hours? Yes.
Hmm.
And it took Sintra like 30 seconds.
Right. But you and me have the same, I wouldn't call it disease, I would call it a superpower. It's a one-word superpower that all of us have.
Mhm.
Squirrel.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you go down that road
Mm-hmm.
and you find that one thing,
Mm-hmm.
is it distracting you from the core of what you're trying to get
Yes.
across?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it becomes letting Chat GPT or Sintra or any of these
Mm-hmm.
other tools help direct you is good, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately you still have to
Mm-hmm.
make a decision. And
Right.
that it's still a
Mm-hmm.
human to
Mm-hmm.
human.
Mm-hmm.
When it's all said and done, no matter whether it's written by computer, written by you,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you're still a human
Mm-hmm.
talking to another human in
Right.
one way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and we've talked about this on some of the other interviews this month. It hallucinates. And I love
Yes.
that they use that term. And basically what it means is it's got it wrong.
Right.
And and it's looking at gazillions of uh, data. I mean,
Right.
it's probably, at one point in time, yes, it is a fixed amount, but then a millisecond later, it's a different amount. But yeah,
Right.
so it's looking at all that data, which may or may not be correct.
Right.
And so that's where we have to, as the human, go back in and double check.
Right.
Because we've all seen the memes especially on Facebook, that Abraham Lincoln said the internet would not be trustworthy or something like that,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And of course that's not, no, but Chat GPT or some of these other programs might see that so many times
Right.
that it thinks that's real and that Abraham
Right.
Lincoln did state it, and it wouldn't know, wait a minute, that was before Al Gore invented the internet.
Right.
And so that's where we have to be our due diligence to make sure that it's correct, especially
Right.
when you're doing numbers and some things like that, where it's really important to have it factual.
Well, and then you've got to get into there are, the different flavors
Mm-hmm.
of large language models.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so if you look at the big ones as they stand today,
Mm-hmm.
you have Anthropic, which is Chat GPT.
Mm-hmm.
You have it's Llama, which is, I believe, Facebook. You
Mm-hmm.
have,
What's
Claude.
Yeah, Claude. What's Google's?
Google's is Gemini.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got these four different. So
Mm-hmm.
Google obviously is training its model on something.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook is training its model on
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of these are
Mm-hmm.
training their models on different
Mm-hmm.
things. And so yeah, I'm not in any of these companies. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any insider knowledge, but
Mm-hmm.
if I was to make an assumption, I would make an assumption that Google probably leans heavily on what Google has.
Right.
Facebook leans on what Facebook
Mm-hmm.
has. You've got
Makes
Grok,
sense.
which
Mm-hmm.
is, Twitter is doing its
Mm-hmm.
own, and so you've got all these different large language
Mm-hmm.
models. And some of them may be going out and looking at history books.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them may not be looking at
Mm-hmm.
history books. Some of them may be looking at video and audio.
Mm-hmm.
Some may not.
Mm-hmm.
There are also the other kind of what I consider to be the landmine or, water mine
Mm-hmm.
that's out there is copyright,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Where it's going out and grabbing
Mm-hmm.
information, and if they get sued and have to pull that information back out,
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
what is it really seeing? Is it
Mm-hmm.
seeing everything? Is it seeing
Mm-hmm.
pieces? So when you talk about hallucination,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it could be learning from one thing where things are
Mm-hmm.
wrong. It
Mm-hmm.
could be learning from multiple things where it can't make a decision on what's right.
Mm-hmm. And then
You
it
know,
shorts out and we broke the internet.
exactly, yeah. I mean, it's really easy to break the internet, especially if you ask Siri a question that it can't answer. It's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and so there's a lot to think about with this stuff, but I think, really when it gets down to it, where we're at right now, where we're going to be a year from now is
Mm-hmm.
going to be vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're at
Right. I
right
mean,
now.
look how much it's changed in 3 years.
Oh yeah. Well, and there's a million tools out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you something. The tool that you're using today probably will not be there in a year from now.
Right. It will either have morphed into something else,
Or been
died
bought
out
by
completely, or
somebody.
been bought. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so, no matter what you're using, how you're using it and everything, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
change. And the problem with change nowadays, it's changing so fast.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard for us to keep up.
Right.
No, we are not like the LLMs. We cannot
Mm-hmm.
learn indefinitely because our brains do get
Right.
full and we
Mm-hmm.
do get tunnel vision
Mm-hmm.
and we get overwhelmed.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I one of my New Year's resolutions is to use AI a lot more.
mhm.
Because I think it will make my life easier. And there are times where, yes, I'm going to admit it, I'm lazy. Um, and so I'm part of this great mastermind group. We had several people in the interviews this month who were part of that mastermind group, and they're way smart on this. I look at it and I'm almost paralyzed because there's so much.
Mhm.
And of course, then what happens is we go back to Chat GPT.
Right.
But yeah, there's so many different things. And I was talking to one person who was saying, well, now what big corporations are doing, because they want to use AI, but their information needs to be proprietary.
Right.
Doesn't matter what they're doing, but they don't want it out there in the universe. And so they're developing their own in-house AI.
Right.
And and I was like, oh, now my brain really hurts. And it's everywhere.
Right.
I was messaging you earlier, and yes, we are recording this in mid-January. I launched Excel, and this thing came up and said, hey, we have now added AI to
Right.
Microsoft 365.
Right.
I, of course, clicked yes, and now I hate it. In 3 hours, I'm like, why did I do this?
Yes.
But it's everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh, it is. And if I go back to the tools that I started using, let's go
Mhm.
back to the origination of where
Mhm.
we were to where we are. And
Mhm.
let me, yeah, maybe it's a good time for me to kind of dish out some of the ways that I'm using AI.
Yes. Because
And
you
some of the
use it
tools.
quite a bit.
Oh, I do. Yeah, I
Mhm.
use it every day.
Mhm.
Multiple times a day. I mean, me and my iPhone are best friends. We talk about that kind of stuff. And there's
Mhm.
Layla, my dog,
Yes, we love Layla.
Yeah, we love Layla. So when we start with one of the first things I dove into AI
Mhm.
was I bought, and I just did a blog post, and we've talked about this
Right.
a
Free
while
or
ago about,
paid. Mhm.
yeah, paid or free, right? There's so many free tools out there,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? There are certain things that you just are better off paying for. The one that I determined that was most worth it that I paid for up front was Grammarly.
Mhm.
Okay. Grammarly is a tool that basically you can put on your Mac, your PC, your phone, whatever, and it will go into every program and it will help you write better. And it'll make suggestions. Your grammar sucks. Now, my nickname is Captain Typo. I am
Right.
just terrible. I can't spell. I had DDA when I was in high school, so ask me where a punctuation goes. All I know is the comma goes somewhere in the middle and a period goes at the end.
Yeah.
And too often I put in exclamation points where a period should be. That's just the way I
Mhm.
write. So Grammarly comes in and says, You know, I can't do that, Brian.
Yes.
So
It gets its howl voice.
right, exactly, and comes in and gives you suggestions. Now, the thing about Grammarly is you could say dismiss, right? But if you're in a hurry, you're constantly going to say approve, approve, approve,
Right.
approve. Well,
Like
you've
we
got to
said,
take the
a little lazy.
yeah, exactly. But you got to take the time because if you just let it do it, then AI is taking over your voice.
Right.
Right. But you got to read it and say, no, this is the way I say it. I have a trigger word, which is so. And you will notice that if you go back and you do a transcript of this and you look at the numbers of so that I say in this entire interview, it probably will be close to 100 or more because it's something that my brain
Right.
does.
Yes.
It's my
Somebody else
pause.
might say, you know.
Right. It's my pause word that gives me a second to catch my brain to catch up with what I'm going to say. And I've been recorded doing extemporaneous speaking, and I could see the so start every single one of those things. But if you talk that way, it's okay to put it in there.
Right. Especially if you're writing an email.
Right. And now everything, Apple has its own intelligence. Google has its own intelligence. Microsoft has its own intelligence. Now you're getting competing artificial intelligence trying to tell you how to write a freaking email.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they're close, but they're not all identical, which is kind of interesting.
Yes. And again, it goes back to whose language model is it using, right? So that's one tool that I think is really, it has been a boon for me. It's important. I still use it to this day. So let's use writing a blog, okay? The second tool that I use that has been around for quite a while, which I pay for, is called Crystal Knows. And Crystal Knows, basically, it limits, it knows people and their information on LinkedIn and a little bit on Gmail and Google. And it is using a public domain version of the disk system and the data within those particular programs to do a personality test on somebody that you're talking to. So what I can do is if I'm trying to put a blog to a specific person, I can actually go in and say, okay, write to this person. Okay, I can write to that particular personality, right? The type, the high D, the type A, that kind of person. I want them, if I'm trying to reach a high D, if I'm trying to reach a skeptic, an S, then you write it differently, right? It depends on who you're trying to target that specific thing to. It's also an incredible tool if you're meeting somebody for the first time.
It gives you kind of a leg up on what they're going to look for.
Well, not only a leg up on, but you get to know, what triggers them, what their pet peeves are, those kind of things. And before I, started using this on a regular basis, I bought it and I started sending it to people that I know and say, here's what Crystal said about you. And they went, oh my God, this is spot on.
You did that on me, if I'm remembering right. And I was like, okay, that's just weird.
Yes, exactly.
Because it picked up on some stuff that we don't always want to admit to.
Right, exactly. And so there's another tool that gives you, information. And again, it is AI, right? It's always been AI. So I write my blog, I write it to a specific person. The next thing that I do is use Apple Intelligence, which is, I have one of the newer Macs and it has Apple Intelligence. And I actually went in and grabbed a Siri voice, a high quality Siri voice. This is important because we'll talk about a couple other, remind me about audio video marketing tools. Okay. I grabbed a Siri voice so it sounds more human. And then I can go in and actually have that blog read to me.
Right.
So I can hear how it sounds. Because when people read, If they're a reader, they're only skipping, they're grabbing keywords. If they're an auditory learner, they're going to read it as if somebody was speaking it to
Right.
them.
So
Right?
how is it flowing? Is it
Exactly.
flowing?
Right. And there are certain phrases that you listen to, it's like, huh? In writing, it looks great, right? But when you hear it back, it's like, that doesn't make sense, right? So, having it read back to you gives you a different perspective on it.
Right.
Now, that sounds like a lot of work for writing an article, but, if you're writing one article a week and you're hoping this thing's going to have longevity of a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and still be valid, it's worth all that energy to do it.
Right. Or if you're wanting to use it to catch somebody's attention who might buy from you, or refer to you or something like that, it's worth it unless whatever you're doing is $5, right?
Exactly.
And so, yeah, it's worth that time and effort to make sure that you're not just saying, see the brown truck hit the red cow.
Right. Exactly. So, you're putting together a piece of work that you're hoping is going to be on the internet. And eventually, again, part of it too is it might get scraped and you might get attributed to that via an LLM, right? Because you had a unique way of looking things. You did it in a quality way. The other option that you could do is you can go into Chat GPT and say, write me an article about this topic, and just take whatever it's got and throw it up on the internet so you can get your stuff up there faster than anything else. And the problem is 98% of the people out there are doing that. And 2% of the people are doing what I'm talking about, which is taking the time to not perfect, because I'm not saying you have to be perfect, but taking the time to thoughtfully produce something that's different.
So tell us those steps again.
Yeah, well, the first one was, basically writing something using Grammarly, and it kind of just fills in the gaps, right? And the second thing is Crystal knows I can actually put that, piece, or I could take a piece of it and throw it into Crystal knows based on a person whose personality I know is a high D or an S or a C or an I, and say, I want to reach this person. How would you word it differently so I can kind of see how it works? And the last thing is then I have it read back to me using a voice. You can basically speak the article to yourself. Using a computer and listen to it. And then when that's done, then I hand it off to a proofreader.
Right. Yeah. Who's going to go, wait a minute.
Yeah. Who reads it for themselves, because I'm the forest who can't see the tree, right? I'm so engrossed in what I'm doing. Hence why I'm Captain Typo.
Right.
With DDA, I can't see that I misspelled there. Right.
Yeah. And we don't see our own mistakes. I mean, that's because we see it correct.
Right. Exactly. And plus, we could read through the same thing time and time and time again and try to figure it out. But we would never see it. So that's, one methodology of using the current technology. And I'm sure there's more and better ways of doing it. That just happens to be what works for me.
Right. And you've actually been doing that for quite a while.
Yep. Yeah. For years. I mean, and I've gotten, let's put it this way, Mike. My content has gotten better because of that and adding that on. And it's relatively recently that I've been doing the read it back to you stuff, because I was doing a podcast for years, right? And what I'd do is I'd write an article and then I would, put it out there, and then I would read it in the podcast, and I go in the podcast and this doesn't sound right. And I would change the article because the way I read it, right? I was doing that. And then I figured, hey, I stopped my podcast. I hit 1,000. I went from, having 3,000 listeners per month down to 1,500 listeners per month, down to 150 listeners a month. And I'm going, okay, it's time for me to, it's, but I still want to write the content, right? So I had to find an alternative way of doing this. And that's why I had the, spent the time to learn how to get my Mac computer to actually read back the article to me in a way that sounded human. Okay. So, am I following in the path of what you're hoping to get at?
Yes. And there's some other programs like Notebook LM will kind of do this. I've used that one when I have like a medical paper that's real technical. And I actually heard somebody using this. They said they use it for their kids who are given something that is pretty difficult for them to understand.
Right.
And they will have it summarized in Notebook LM and read to them because they're more auditory.
Right.
And the voices in Notebook LM are like real. They're like spooky real. And they said, and their kids understand it better. I discovered in Adobe, and I discovered this one last week. I subscribe, you subscribe. So we pay Adobe to be able to have different features. I brought up I opened one of the books that I needed to read to get ready for a podcast. And it came, this window opened, right? These things are kind of scary now. And it said, we now have a new feature where we will summarize this book for you.
Oh, yeah. And
I thought, well, this is cool. And it was about a 200-page book. So it took it a while to kind of churn its way through its little system. And then now, like we were saying, I still skimmed the book at least, but it was pretty darn close. I would not do that for like fiction because you don't want a summary of fiction. You want to read every nuance, every line about the bubbling brook and all of those things. But yeah, for what I needed it for, it was perfect.
Was that an Acrobat?
It was in Acrobat. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and that's a new feature that I haven't tried.
Yeah. I just noticed it last week. And so that was, and I mean, this is the thing is we're recording this in January. It will broadcast in February. It will be different in March, and I mean, that's kind of the scary thing with this, but talk to us a little bit more about Crystal knows, right?
Sure.
How you use it as a sales tool, because I mentioned in your bio that you work a lot with sales teams and how they use LinkedIn. So talk a little bit more about that.
Well, let me go back a little bit more and I'll get into how Crystal Knows plays into this. Okay, so first and foremost, one of the biggest things that a lot of companies don't do is they have legacy data that stays legacy data and is never updated.
Right. This person worked at X company 29 years ago.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you have, I mean, I've got it too. Everybody's got it. I have old customer data, that has an email for somebody that worked at a particular company at a particular time. And at the time of this recording has had 3 jobs since. Right. So one of the first things that you have to do before you do anything is have good data to play off of. You got to know, and one of the challenges I'm having with one of my customers, I've been telling them for years, you have an email list, you have a accounting system, you have a CRM, you need to take all of those things, throw it in a pot, cook it, match up all the things that match up, find the things that don't match up, and figure out the ones that don't match up, which one's real.
Right.
Because like hallucinations, if you don't have a current email address, if you don't have a current address, if you don't have a current email address, you can send all the email you want, but nobody's ever going to see it, right?
Yeah, and it may or may not come back as bounced.
Right, exactly. And a lot of times when we send out business to business emails, an occasional company will send back an email, and this is part of the job that we're doing, is they'll say, this person no longer works here.
Right.
Contact this person, right? So the first thing you got to look at is massaging the data.
Right. Is your data good?
Right.
And then you've got Bob who has the stack of business cards.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Who doesn't? I mean, my stack is always smaller because I'm basically
I was sorting through mine the other day and I threw some away.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Hey, it's a good thing to do. So, you start with good data. And then, you've got somebody that maybe moved from company A to company B, right? Let's just say, okay, you and me are working together and you're the purchasing agent for Acme Anvil, right? Think of Wile E. Coyote.
Yes.
Right. So I send you an email and I get an email back that says, hey, Deb no longer works at Acme Anvil. Talk to Wile E. Coyote. And so then they're still my customer. They're still purchasing things, right? I go into and I pick up the phone and I talk to Wiley. I say, hey, Wiley, how you doing, man? What's going on? And all this other stuff. And he goes, I don't want to hear about it. How can I get a lower price?
I don't know you.
Yeah, exactly. So the ability of Crystal allows people to go in and say, okay, this person has changed. Let me look at that person on LinkedIn. Let me go and use it. Crystal uses LinkedIn. You can go in and look at their profile. It does an immediate personality profile on them. if they have any kind of data inside of LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could look at it and say, who is this person?
Mm-hmm.
What is their personality
Mm-hmm.
type? What triggers them? What makes them? What
Mm-hmm.
should you say to them? What should you not
Mm-hmm.
say to them? How to introduce? How to
Mm-hmm.
sell? How to do all these other
Mm-hmm.
things? So that's a real life example of how
Mm-hmm.
Crystal works in sales,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
Right.
if you don't know who's in that position and you're
Mm-hmm.
not keeping your data prominent
Mm-hmm.
and you go and you start sending emails, let's go down the example of,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden artificial intelligence is writing an email to a person that's going into Crystal and looking and saying,
Mm-hmm.
this person is a D,
Mm-hmm.
and the person is an S. And your email program is writing it to a D because that's the name that you have in there and you don't
Mm-hmm.
have the correct information. You're
Mm-hmm.
basically going to either freak somebody out or piss
Mm-hmm.
them off.
Right. Yeah, because you didn't communicate with them in the way that you should have been.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the bottom line, I call these baconisms, they're things that I wrote in my book and did in speeches. People want to be communicated to the way they like to be communicated to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. It could be that, and that's the other piece of this too, is, a good database, like I use Nimble, which is kind of a cheap CRM.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows me, Nimble does, it does the same thing. I can go into Nimble and create a card,
Mm-hmm.
for somebody. It
Mm-hmm.
basically does a CRM card and it's got AI in it, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
goes into LinkedIn. I go to Deb Creer, I pull Deb Creer in, and then I go to Crystal Knows and pull in Deb Creer's personality profile, put that in the
Mm-hmm.
file, and then when I talk to you, I can type notes
Mm-hmm.
in, and now I've got a record of who you are and what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing and things of that nature. So having good data along the way gives
Mm-hmm.
you the tools and the ability to
Mm-hmm.
maintain and build those
Mm-hmm.
relationships. And so what I try to do is number one, help companies, make their data
Mm-hmm.
better. And then secondly, teach your salespeople
Mm-hmm.
how to use tools
Mm-hmm.
to make their lives easier to sell more stuff.
Right. Right. And for some people, they might be going, psh, not worth it. But if you're selling something that is a pretty big ticket item,
Right.
for one thing, it's probably going to take a while. You're not
Right.
going to call up and say, hey, Brian, you need to buy this. And you go, okie dokie.
Right.
There might be months, years of the
Right.
sales cycle before I actually convince you to do this. But it's going to be worth it to have all of this other stuff so that you don't hang up on me the second time I call you or email you or whatever.
Yep. So, there's all kinds of technology that's coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are, so we talked about the things that we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you about the things that are here now that are exciting, but not quite perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that you can actually go in and digitize your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use it in videos and you can use it in phone calls and you can use, like, for example, if you wanted to, and I don't recommend you do this, is you can create a voiceover, that it knows your voice and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And you can have it automatically dial a line of phone numbers and cold call them and say, hey, Deb, this is Brian Basilico from B2B Interactive Marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you don't know me, but I would love to know, what exactly you would like to know about my
Mm-hmm.
company. And here's my phone number and contact me, right? So, and then it can go into the next
Mm-hmm.
record and say, hey, Bob, and then, hey,
Mm-hmm.
Fred, hey, Wiley, it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can basically use that to automate the whole
Mm-hmm.
system.
Right.
Right.
And that works until they ask a question
Mm-hmm.
or obviously that's been kind of the evolution of chatbots, right? Where it originally answered some basic questions based on like FAQs that you put in there or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's getting more and more sophisticated, but I used to love screwing it up. Like you said, breaking the internet. I used to love asking chatbots a question that I knew it could not figure out.
Oh, yeah.
And just watching its tiny little brain go boogity, 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 boogity.
Well, the funny thing is I just got a scam call, says scam likely, right?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so it's a number that I don't recognize.
Right.
And every time you get one of the scam calls and they say, hi, is this Brian?
Mm-hmm.
I go, what color is blue?
Yes, because it wants you to say yes.
Yeah. Right.
Because then it can use that in other things.
Exactly.
So, folks, if you get a scam call, whatever you do, don't say yes or even no.
Just say maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I say who is calling and then click, right? Because it goes, oops, she's smarter than I am. And it goes on to the next person.
Exactly.
But yeah, do not say yes. And it's funny because that actually comes back almost to my years ago media training, right? Where we would say no, but, and and when they would edit it, we only got the no.
Right, yeah.
And so, but yeah, it's don't give the one word answers where those can be copied and then used elsewhere in your voice.
Right. Well, and then so we talked about the audio side of things, right? So you can use that to create a podcast if you want to. You could take, just like I did, I could take that piece of stuff and basically turn it into a podcast.
Right.
Or I could turn it into a video. I could actually, in artificial intelligence, will be able to take that and obviously take the words and turning it into text, but it could probably go in and preemptively look at what you're saying and create slides and bullet points and all these other things to create a video. And if you digitize yourself, not only can it make you younger and smarter and better looking, but it will, put you in the video, give the hand gestures that you give, put slides up, all of this stuff is coming, but in worlds that we have not seen yet, they're also called deep fakes, right?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, those are scary because they're getting so good. You cannot tell the difference. A year ago, people had a real weird glow around them or, all sorts of different things. But now they are so good that you really can't tell the difference.
And I'll give you an example.
Is it real? Is it Memorex?
Yeah. I'll give you an example, a real world example is I had a program that I was using. Of course, there's Audible for audiobooks, right? And there's other, companies that do audiobooks. But there was a company out of, I think it was England, called Blinkist. And Blinkist would
I like Blinkist.
I love Blinkist. They give you 15-minute, basically summaries of full-blown books, right? So if you want to read, Think and Grow Rich or remember what was in the book or a book that you read years ago, it was perfect for that. What I found was over the last year is they started using artificial intelligent voices to read the books.
Oh.
And so what I could tell is when a real person read a book and when AI read the book, because it went, I'm giving you a point, I'm giving you a point, I'm giving you a point, my point is done. I'm giving you a point, and my point is done. Right. It's like you could always tell when they, it's like it only knew the inflections of things like that.
And it doesn't know when to do dramatic pauses and things like that. Yeah.
It's getting better, but it got to be the point where it was almost like I was listening to a boom, 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 boom. I wouldn't hear the lyrics because I was following the beat. And it made it less useful as a human to be able to consume the data that they were trying to provide via audio, right?
Right.
So there's some unforeseen consequences that you will not know until you try it.
Right. And is that going to get better? Obviously.
Yes.
And I haven't tried it yet, but I understand that Canva has a new feature where it can generate videos.
Yeah.
And I want to try that because I need to update some videos. Could I do it myself? Sure. But I am the squirrel, right? Of course, the funny thing is I will spend far more time playing than I would if I, just actually did it. And sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's not. But, just over Christmas, there was a big hullabaloo that I saw where Coca-Cola did an entirely AI generated commercial. Yes. Now, you knew from the first 2 seconds it was AI. I mean, because it wasn't cartoon, but it also wasn't real. I mean, it was kind of that middle ground. And I'm not sure why everybody threw such a snit fit about it. I mean, for one thing, they got to have it look exactly the way they wanted it. So maybe, rather than fake snow or having to go to some bizarre place to get snow or, film it at the wrong time of year, all those things. And somebody still had to write it. People were still very much involved in this process. It didn't have anybody that it was, made an image of, a real person, and all of those things. But, and to me, that's no different than Lord of the Rings or cartoons. I mean, you kind of have to suspend disbelief on occasion.
Well, and we go back to, the purists, right? The purists want back in the day when I was in video,
Mm-hmm.
years and years and years ago, when you did a commercial, you had a team of about 25 people.
Right.
You had the grip, the best boy, the lighting
Mm-hmm.
director,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
lighting grip,
Somebody
the
making
audio
cookies.
person, the boom mic person, the director, the script writer,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
go through all these things.
Right.
And now with AI, basically, you just type in what you want and it
Mm-hmm.
will create everything.
Mm-hmm.
It'll even write the music.
Mm-hmm.
So musicians aren't getting paid, artists
Mm-hmm.
aren't getting paid, all these other people aren't getting paid, and everybody's freaking out that they're all losing their job to a computer,
Mm-hmm.
right? In reality, yeah, it's true. It's very true. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that we have to understand is the end result of the end result. The end result is, yes, some jobs are going to be taken away while
Mm-hmm.
others are going to be created.
Mm-hmm.
The
Right.
question is are you forward thinking? Are you stuck in what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, or are you
Mm-hmm.
thinking ahead? So
Right.
since we got a limited amount of time today, I want to
Mm-hmm.
cover two more things. And one is, what does the future look like?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from marketing
Right.
perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as I've been talking about, all the things was, write something good,
Mm-hmm.
double check it, listen to it, and then present it.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the future, you're going to be able to have somebody come to a website.
Mm-hmm.
It will, if they can get them to answer a question,
Mm-hmm.
or figure out, just put in their name,
Mm-hmm.
put in your full name.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual website itself may be able to go out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assimilating a bunch of things, but it
Right.
may be able to use Crystal Knows to go out to LinkedIn
Mm-hmm.
to grab the information,
Mm-hmm.
understand the personality of the
Mm-hmm.
person that you're going, and say, okay, Brian Basilico, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
And then they type this in, and then it goes, looks at their position, it
Mm-hmm.
goes, looks at their personality,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically recreates content
Mm-hmm.
specific to them, even
Right.
changing the images on the
Mm-hmm.
website.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and gives them stuff. Not everything is going to be 100% audio based or phone
Mm-hmm.
based. There are still
Right.
people that sit down at a
Mm-hmm.
computer all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Like me, I mean, I cannot run my business on a cell phone.
Right.
I have 5 screens in front of me
Mm-hmm.
right now, and every single one of them has something going on,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another thing going on over
Mm-hmm.
here. My calendar's sitting over here.
Mm-hmm.
My Slack style stuff is sitting over here, project management. And, I still have my phone, which
Mm-hmm.
rang in the middle of this, but is popping up messages and
Mm-hmm.
notifications.
Right.
You
Mm-hmm.
talk about ADD on steroids,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all used all day
Mm-hmm.
long.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's going to be a point where, being able to personalize this. But when you get down to brass tacks, at some point, you as a human are going to have to communicate with another human
Mm-hmm. Right.
in order to make things work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everybody can pull out their credit card and order stuff, and Amazon will deliver it to the
Mm-hmm.
front of the house, right? And it may get rid of Amazon drivers and have drones do it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it may have computers that pick it and put it in drone boxes and everything else, and there'll be
Mm-hmm.
no more Amazon people. It'll just be a bunch of robots that are delivering stuff that you don't need to your house when you
Yes.
want,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at one point in business, you as a human being
Mm-hmm.
are going to have to communicate to another human being, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the thing that I think that artificial intelligence is going to have a harder time helping us
Mm-hmm.
to do
Right.
because you're still
Mm-hmm.
going to have to be a human and
Mm-hmm.
have skills to be able to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
The key for that website that I was talking about that actually gets people to do things
Mm-hmm.
is to get them to contact you.
Yes.
If
Mm-hmm.
you answer their question
Mm-hmm.
and you satisfied their need and you
Mm-hmm.
don't leave them wanting more,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to say, I got what I need and walk
Mm-hmm.
away. And you're
Right.
not going to do business with them.
Mm-hmm.
So why put
Mm-hmm.
together a website that isn't going to
Mm-hmm.
build a relationship,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right?
And it does come back to relationships and knowing those little things about people. I was sending the proposal off to my client to increase our scope of work.
Mhm.
And I didn't just say, here's a proposal. I want to do more stuff and you give me more money. I
Right.
said, oh my gosh, looks like you had a great Christmas based on your Facebook posts. Too bad about Georgia losing football. My Buffs didn't do all that well either. And that little bit
Yes.
is what makes the whole thing worth it, right?
Right.
And AI cannot do that. Anyhow,
No.
right now it can't.
Right. And even if it could, is it the right time?
Mm-hmm.
You know, An example of this is I had a client I talked to you earlier before we did this recording, and I have a client that I meet on Mondays, and they couldn't do Mondays, and they moved it to Tuesday, and we got to Tuesday, and I'm sitting online waiting for him, and I said, "Hey, I'm online." And 5 minutes later, I put up a GIF that said Bueller,
Yes,
Bueller, right?
Bueller.
Yeah. And then almost, I usually, if nobody shows up 15 minutes, I just
I
get
give
off.
15. Yep.
Yeah, I give 15, right? But I'm sitting here and all of a sudden it's like I'm in the middle of a S show, which I mean stars and all that kind of fun stuff. And can we move it to tomorrow, right? I think the just lightness of I'm here and the Bueller, Bueller,
Yeah.
Bueller,
Oh, yeah.
is a much better way of doing it. But you got to know the context, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot predict that this person isn't mad at you or
Right.
happy with you or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult for AI to be able to predict the future. Right? It'll always be good at looking at the past and creating something of value, but it's still going to take a human to look at it and say, this is good, this is bad. I'm sure AI created the Coke commercial, but how many executives do you think sat there and watched that over and over and over and over again? And it's like said, the red on the truck doesn't look right.
It's not quite our Coca-Cola red.
Right. And it's moving too fast across the screen. You're not seeing the logo long enough, right? There's a bunch of people sitting there helping the AI do its thing, right? This is not just make a 30-second Coke commercial and yada, yada, yada. So it gets back to there's still that human input inside of AI that is going to make it work. So I think the theme that we're trying to get across today is it's great tools. There are things that you can do today. There are millions of tools out there. You could spend your entire day doing nothing.
Yeah,
there's
squirrel,
a guy I know.
Squirrel.
Yeah, well, there's people that I know that constantly put, the top 10 list. Here's the top 10 things. You want to do a video, do this. You want to write a script, do this. You want to do this, you want to do this.
My brain would short out if I had that type of job.
But they're just sitting there.
They love it.
They're pulling their favorite thing out. But there may be 10 tools that work better for you because the person who's putting the list together doesn't know how your brain works.
Right.
Right. And you may go, and again, you're relying on people to say, what are the top 10 tools to turn a voiceover into a video? And it's going to give you 10 tools. Well, guess what? You need to go in and play with every single one.
Right.
Just because it creates great video doesn't mean the interface is going to make sense to you.
Right.
That's going to be fast. That isn't going to break, or that it's going to be here in a week. Right?
Yep.
And that's the other thing too. If you're betting your business on anything, you better make sure that what you're betting your business on is going to be around a week from now, because I've seen that happen where a business just says, hey, we're not here anymore. Bye.
Right.
And all your data and all of your files and everything that you've created goes away with them.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's especially true with software programs.
Right.
That's and so depending on what it is, do you have your backup? All of those various things. Even if it's not that it goes away, but it gets acquired by somebody else.
Right.
I always laugh when I have businesses that tell me, oh, I no longer have a website because I have a Facebook business page.
Right.
And I tell them, you understand that's Facebook's toy. And you could log in tomorrow and they could say, it's going to cost you $10,000.
Right. And they pretty much do called ads.
Yeah.
Everybody got it for free and you got seen, and now it's called ads. And that's so spot on. The other thing that we talk about a lot is own it. You need to own it. I'm a firm believer in everything that you do, have a local hard drive, have a backup, and make backups of everything here before you put it on the internet. Because if you put everything on YouTube, all you got to do is do one stupid thing and they take your channel down. All your viewers go away. All your videos go away, and there's no way to recover.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. And, like I said, we chat every year. Oh, yeah. So, who knows what we'll be talking about next year? Maybe flying cars. I want a flying car.
I want to meet George Jetson. He's here.
I was having this discussion with somebody and they said, Rosie the robot. I want Rosie. Right.
Well, that's what we named our eco-vac that goes around the house is Rosie. That was also my mom's name, Rosie. So.
Oh, that works. Yeah. See, my cats would totally freak and that'd be the end of that. Yeah.
Layla just lays on the couch and looks at it and goes, okay.
Yeah. See, and ours our dogs would say, "Are you going to feed me? Are you going to feed me? Are you?" And follow it around. Are you going to feed me? Squirrel.
Exactly.
Right. So for people who say, "Hey, we want to know more about Brian," how do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Simplest thing is go to LinkedIn, look up Brian Basilico. There's only one of me. That's the easiest thing. In there, you'll find links to everything. You could also go to brianbasilico.me. It has links to everything. The services I provide, I work specifically with mid-sized B2B businesses. And when I say mid-size, it's $1 million up to a certain point, usually companies with sales teams. And what I do is help people evaluate what they're doing in their marketing, help them to scrub and maintain their lists, and then create content. I have a team of people that write, produce video, web, all that kind of fun stuff. And they come in as needed and basically help create the content and help distribute it. And then we measure how it's working and we adapt and help people. The bottom line is our goal is to help your sales team make more sales. And that's it. Marketing should produce sales.
Cool. So, I always ask my guests at the end, what final thoughts do you have that you want to leave everyone with?
What I want to leave everybody with is to keep learning always. I mean, that's the reason here I am sitting at, when I first started, there were no computers, there was no AI, there were no cell phones, there was none of this stuff. Over the years, you have to adapt. So being on a show like this, I learned things. Listening to shows like this, I learned things. So follow Deb. She's got great people that she brings on, and continue to learn throughout your entire life, because the day you stop learning is the day you stop earning.
I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer, as always, having a great conversation with Brian Basilico. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.